From our previous tutorial, we have all the HTML5 containers laid out on our page with some information. So what we need to do now is create a CSS to stylize these containers. What we're going to use is an external CSS sheet. So we need to make an area between the closed title and the closed head, and we need to create a CSS sheet. If you're not using Dreamweaver, you're basically creating a blank HTML document, but it'll be saved as .css. So what we need to do is first of all link this to our document. So I'm just going to go File, and I'm going to go Save As, and I'm going to place this inside our CSS, and I'm just going to give it a site CSS. So this will apply to all the pages of the site. Click on Save, and you see that it appears now in these folders. What I need to do now is link that file to our HTML. So to do this, we're going to be using external CS file. I'm just going to drag and drop that. So if you haven't done this before, you need to put in a link, the relation, which is style sheet, the type, text CSS, also the reference of where the file is. So you notice it's within a subfolder called CSS, and the file is called site.css. So you've got to make sure that the file names and the paths match up. Otherwise the CSS sheet will not apply. So once I've done that, in Dreamweaver, if I click back on the design view, or if I move it to design view, and now we can start stylizing the page by clicking on the CSS. Now to stylize our website, the very first thing we're going to do is start with the outer container. In some websites you may have used the word wrapper in the ID, but we're going to use the ID, and to reference this we need to use the hash symbol, so Shift 3, and we need to use its name. So I need to use its name container, and then we can open a brace and close a brace. Now these names must match up, and they are case sensitive, so it's very important. And to make sure that we've got the right ID tag, I'm going to start with a background color. And remember using the American spelling, and we're going to use red, green, blue. So I'm able to actually pick up the red, green, blue alpha channel, and I'm going to put a gray in. And then when I save this and click over in the design view, you notice that the whole container's backgrounds turn gray. So this will let us know which section that we're working in. Now we're going to be using a screen that's good for 1024 resolution. So to do this, we're going to set the page width. So this stops people with smaller monitors from having to scroll right and left. So we're going to set the width to 960 pixels. Now at the end of every style, it's a good idea to put a semicolon on there so we know where it ends. And also what I want to do is position this container in the middle of the screen. So if they do have a larger monitor, it'll actually sit in the middle of that. So I'm actually going to use the margin, and I'm going to use the 0 auto, which is auto left and right, and 0. So the top is 0, the bottom is 0, and left and right is auto of the screen. So when I save this and click over here, while you can't see it here now, if I bring this up in Safari, you notice that see how it's automatically moved left and right of the main page. So this is actually stylized our container. Now it's a really good idea as you go along, work on your div tags in order. So I've just done the outer container. The next one's my header. So let's stylize the header. So I'll try to have my CSS sheets going in order as the page goes. So because this is a HTML5 tag, the browser knows that this is for the header section. And we're going to start by floating it, and we're going to float it to the left. So this ensures that it's on the left-hand side of our screen. Also, I'm going to tab that in, and then this will make sure it appears this container will be on the left-hand side of the screen. The next, we want to set the width of this as well. So once again, the width is going to be 960 pixels. So to make sure the container is even with the container above. So therefore on the right hand side it'll be nice and level. And then we want to set a height. And the height will enable us to have a little break of 140 pixels from the top of the screen. And once again I'll set a background color. Red, green, blue, and we'll pick a color that is, say, a light blue. So I'll just come up, pick the sky sort of blue, and go enter. And when I click over here now, we should be able to see that color change. Now you notice that we've got the height of 140 pixels for the box. So this is given the height of the container. The width is the same as the page. Also it's on the float left, so it's on the left hand side of our page. And it has a background color. So after we've done our header section, the next one's to work on the navigation section. So I'm going to set nav. And once again, the browser knows the nav section. And we're going to float again with the left, and we're going to keep the same width. So I can copy these down and recycle a lot of these sort of commands. Also with our nav, we're going to put a bit of a break in there as well. And we'll set the height at 140 as well. This will give us a nice one. So we'll use all of these commands down here, but I'll just change the background color. So we'll change it to, let's pick a, say an orangey sort of color. So it's easy. Okay, let's have a look at this. So now we've got a container with the height. Now if that's too big in here, what we can actually do is adjust the height and say, well, actually I only want it to be, say, 40. When I click over here, notice the container automatically adjusts. So that's the reason why we like to have these separate, and you can adjust those containers as we go around. So remember, we've got sections on the web page, and what we're trying to do is use those boxes to control how the information looks. Next, we're looking at the article. Now remember, the article starts at the top of welcome, goes all the way down before we hit a side right. So what we need to do first of all is go article, and we can set some properties around this. So once again, we're going to keep the float left, but we're going to have a different width this time. And we're not going to set a height because we're not sure how much information is going to be in there. But what I want is this to be 2/3 of the page and the other one to be 1/3. So to begin with, we're going to set this to 630, which gives it about 2/3 of the screen. And also we'll give that a color as well. So you can see what the section is, and we'll set that one to say, set that to a green. Just save that as you go. So now you can actually see how that is now green. So you can also see that the footer at the moment has actually come up inside our document, and we'll control that a little bit later. But we can see that we've got our article as a float left, width 630, and has a background color. Now we know that our sections are a subpart of article. They reside inside of article. So we can actually reference the subparts by saying article, and then we want the sections with inside that. So if we've got other parts on our page that have sections, we can actually reference those sub ones, and they're independent. So the style sheets don't carry across to all sections, but only for the, in this case, the ones that reside underneath article. So what we want to do to these articles is let's keep them floated to the left. Let's have them the same size, and we'll set a background color as well. So let's pick all these up and move them down. Let's change the color. So once again, and we'll pick another color. Let's go with a yellowy sort of color. Press enter. When we click over here, you can now see that we have some yellow in there as well. What we want to make sure is that our container of our article, after the last section is presented, maintains its little gap at the bottom here. To do that, we're going to put in a margin. So we're going to have a margin, and then we're going to have the top is 0, the left is 0, the bottom we're going to have 10 pixels, and then the right 0. So that ensures that the bottom has a gap. We'll keep the green. Now, we're now working on the right align here, which is the aside. So with the aside, we can actually set some properties to this. Now we want to still keep this as a float left, and we still want to keep the pixel width. But the pixel width this time is going to be the remainder of what's left. So we had 960 before. If we take 630 from it, we're left with 330 to get us out to the width of the page. So this container here will take up the remaining space between here and here out to the size. And then we'll give it a color. We'll give that a purple color. Then we'll click out here. Now if we actually increase that, say to 40, so it's bigger than what the container is, you notice how it's automatically slid down and no longer up here. So you need to be aware of the size of your containers, because once we exceed the 960 that we've been setting the major container, then we will have some wrapping problems. Now the last container we need to deal with after we've done a side is the footer. We need to place the footer back down the bottom. So once again we'll use the footer. And the first thing we're going to do is we're going to remove all the conditions about the wrapping. So we're going to go clear and we're going to put both. And then when we click over here, you notice that the footer has now wrapped to the bottom. So it's actually removed any of the other formatting that was previously there and goes back to the width of the container at the top. Now once we've got the footer done, we can actually set the width of the footer. So we can clear all the formatting and go width. And we can set that to the 960 pixels so it stays within the structure. We can give it a height, so we can actually have a little bit of a gap if we like, and we can set that to 100 pixels, so from the bottom. And then if we wanted, we can set a background color as well. And in this case here, we'll still keep using red, blue, green channel and the alpha, and I'll set that one to white. And you can see that it's now white. So let's go and save this and go into our design view now. You can see where there's no information, and you can see the outer container is just grey. We can see where the footer is, our heading and navigation. We can actually see where our article is and also the sections within inside that. Now that we've used CSS3 to set up the structure of our page, we can now go and remove the colors of our backgrounds and then stylize the page with a proper theme using fonts and classes.